G'day to all. It's 6:30 sharp. I'm here. Happy to see you again tonight, this week. And for today, we'll have quite a bit to cover with you, and I'll be very happy to do that when I see that some of you have joined. I'm just monitoring the other screens so as to see if anyone is currently joining. If yes, then I'll progressively engage with today's theme. Hi, one guest. So g'day. Not sure who this is. So for today, we are back after 2 weeks of elections in France, where I think it was important to discuss polls and results from elections. And for today, we are getting back into more research routines with less spectacular things coming from the news, from the media, but there might be some to come. Perhaps not tonight. Today's theme is not really conducive for that, but it's an important one. Today I want to address, or I think it's important to address, theoretical saturation, which, in other words, is the question as to when you should stop collecting empirical data. When do you have sufficient empirical data to really have enough to theorize and to draw conclusions? Hi, g'day, Rachel. That's always an important question. How long for shall I collect data, and when shall I stop? And how can I decide when to stop? So I see there are another 3 people. G'day to all. Be welcome for tonight. So before I engage in this discussion as to when to stop with empirical data collection, as usual, some news. G'day, Fuad Peter. Nice to see you. An update from the AI front, and also an update from our own odyssey into AI. Now I can say ours, as Rachel is part of it, and Rachel is here tonight, as she's always been here since the beginning. Sorry, asthma with pollens and spring, so I might have to use my Ventolin quite a few times tonight. But I promise I will stay alive during the stream. I will not pass away down the track. So for this week in the AI world, there were a few things as usual, and there is one I will not address, a spectacular thing I will not address, because I do not have any verified sources, so I will not discuss it for tonight. Maybe next week. I'm just eliciting it in passing. Anthropics seemingly has postponed the release of a new model because it could be very dangerous for mankind. So it could be easily used for the worst possible purposes. No idea how true this is. No idea whether it is intox, or real piece of news. I'm not sure. I heard there were leaks saying this was not supposed to be made public, not even the information, but it's all conditional, so no idea. I'm just mentioning this in passing, just in case you heard of anything at the moment, nothing is confirmed anywhere. So, what do we know? What is interesting or important from this week? I would say this week there were a few pieces of news. One important piece of news is that OpenAI had decided to quit or to terminate Sora. Said like this, it may sound relatively insignificant or purely anecdotal, but I do believe it is more than just an anecdote. For recollection, Sora was this generative AI-based system that allows to shoot or to create very realistic videos. It would be the end of visual effects. It was also the end of having real life or living actors, as AI could do everything. It was a revolution when it was first launched, then caught up by VO, released by Google. But interestingly, so this was a technological revolution. And OpenAI decided to stop it. Why? Not because of the technology itself, no. But OpenAI has long had a big problem, and it's not over just yet, which is difficulty to monetize their service. OpenAI has launched a number of revolutionary technologies or tools, but has never really managed to make money out of them. So that OpenAI at the moment has the reputation of being the good AI for the public, whilst Anthropic is the best AI for businesses. And OpenAI has now decided to refocus on the corporate markets and on B2B, so making money with corporate clients more than with B2C and the public. Therefore, announcing the end of Sora was a first visible step in this direction. And just saying, we have developed great things. We know at the moment they are not part of our business model, or not anymore, so we know when to stop. And I think this is where there is something important. This is because, or partly because, OpenAI is about to go public, to be listed. And as the company is about to be listed, they must have a viable business model. Fred Peter, I think he would have written a sustainable business model. I would say a long-term secure business model. This is the very reason. Getting rid of those activities that are not making any profit. So my suspicion with this is that OpenAI will progressively either sell to other companies some of its activities, those activities that are not really profitable within its business model, such as Sora, but you could have the same with, DALL-E no longer exists, but with image generation. You could have the same with some other skills or whatsoever. And my feeling is that OpenAI is bound to sell and probably bound to charge them. So or if OpenAI keeps a number of those, I'm pretty sure that clients will have to pay for those specific tools. At the moment, you just pay a monthly subscription that grants you access to everything. So for whatever amount of money, so 20 something dollars, you have access to everything. Of course it cannot be profitable, especially when you know that only 5% of ChatGPT users pay a subscription, pay for a plan. I understood there is a plan like €8, so $9 or $10. Many people pay this little money. Then there's a plan which is 20 something. This is the one I have, and there's a plan which is $250. I'm not sure what this extra plan adds to the interim one, to the one in the middle. I've been using the middle model extensively in about a year, and I do not see what more I could get and why I would pay 10 times more. So here I'm saying for myself, but what concerns me is certainly a question many other users and free users could have. Why should we pay for using ChatGPT when we can have it for free? Why would we pay extra for services that are currently included for free? That's the question. And I do believe that OpenAI is really obliged to make its business model much more profit-oriented and to value generation oriented. Otherwise, the company might not survive on the long term. So this is my feeling, my impression. In parallel, two things, or three that are the same actually. Google, and all this has happened relatively unnoticed, not secret, just unnoticed. Concurrently, Google, Elon Musk, and Nvidia have announced that they were starting to produce new sorts of chips, and Google and Elon Musk are producing quantum chips for their AI, and Nvidia has announced to start producing quantum chips as well. So Google was the first announcing it, and it would be a sort of a big revolution in the AI world. As I explained last week, the merits and the promises of quantum informatics and quantum artificial intelligence that demultiplies the possibilities of AI. So here, Google is starting to produce its own chips, which means that Google is becoming more and more independent from any other actors in the world. And Google, and this was a few weeks back, has also announced that it will produce its own electricity by building its own power plants and its own nuclear power plants. Interesting. So Google will have full control of the entire value chain from components production to service delivery and through to the electricity production. So for Google, going quantum will probably make them be ahead of all others. And this is especially possible as Google is financially one of the strongest companies in the world. So OpenAI can only borrow a lot of money to compete. Anthropic, way too small. They can borrow money. They can make some targeted investments, but cannot totally compete. In parallel, at the same time, Elon Musk made a similar announcement that he would produce his own his own quantum chips through Tesla. So Tesla is bound no longer to be just a software company for the automotive industry, let's say, but will be also a quantum actor. And here we have, as with Google, the second most powerful company on earth that hopes to have full control of the entire value chain, starting again from components with quantum chips to models with Grok and service delivery and integration into their own hardware. Tesla cars, Starlink, satellites, or rockets, or whatsoever. And likewise, NVIDIA announced something relatively similar, making quantum chips for other companies. But interesting here is that NVIDIA will probably lose part of its strength on the market as Google and Elon Musk's businesses are bound to be less dependent on it. To be continued, to be followed. Still with what has happened in this AI world, another two things. One is two or more. One is that the EU has launched a 15 billion euro plan aimed at investing in AI and deep techs, but already this plan is probably not obsolete but insufficient. 15 billions, it is half the value of Anthropic, which is about 30 billions. 15 billions is a fraction of what the big companies, AI companies, are investing at the moment. So 15 billions split across 27 EU countries will probably result in the biggest countries collecting $1 billion, 1 billion or something each, which is pretty little. Is it spectacular? Sort of. Politically spectacular, economically insignificant, I'm afraid. To be followed again. Another piece of news, as I said, there were two, is that this week Google and Meta were sentenced by a US court because their social media, Facebook, WhatsApp, Snapchat, Instagram for Meta, and YouTube for Google were resulting in addictions, were making teenagers addict and were undermining their mental health. So the two companies have been heavily sanctioned by US courts. So this sort of confirms what the European Union had intuited, that there is an addiction problem. There is something insane with those two companies, and here acknowledged by the US justice. So again, we'll see how Meta and Google react. Now, back to my own or our own odyssey into AI. This week, a number of things have happened. One is that I attended on Wednesday the student experience fair in Paris, And the Student Experience Fair is a fair organized by a big prescriber for higher education, Headway Advisory, and that gathers mainly deans and provosts from schools and universities in France. So there are roundtables, there are stands with a number of companies selling solutions. There are many social events where we can congregate with people and informally talk to them. So I attended because I wanted to catch up with a few deans with whom I had been in touch, or with whom I would love to be in touch, or to whom I would like to be introduced. So I went, and it was very interesting, very fruitful. I met a few people I've known and with whom I had been in touch for a while, including one who, and this was very, very funny, whom I asked where they're at with the decision on my tools, and I said, "What? Has none followed up?" I said, "No, never been contacted." I said, "Oh gosh, what a problem, because I'm to renounce tomorrow before my academic staff that I'm reducing their workload with dissertation supervision by 25 to 50% because we have a wonderful tool supporting supervision and my tools." And he said, "Well, I'm announcing this and I do not have the tools. There's a problem. So call me back on next week so we clear this." So we'll contact him tomorrow. I will call him back tomorrow to clear this. So it is promising. So potentially one more contract. Likewise, I had it was from Friday late afternoon. I received an email from a school with which I had been in a discussion for 6 or 7 months, and in this email they were offering me the organizing of the end of studies dissertation in their school, and their introducing of my tools. So I have not said anything just yet, as I found their email on Friday night. I will respond tomorrow favorably, of course. Prior to that, I will try contacting them so as to know a wee bit more and see how I can navigate this. But it's very promising. It would be a real life lab where I could test my tools by myself. "Oh, g'day, Brian. Welcome." So a real life laboratory for experimental design, I would say, where my tools would be used, not just in general, but not just by myself, but introduced, implemented, and encouraged by myself. So this would be the best possible thing. So I can identify whether there are glitches, various problems or difficulties or whatsoever. So very happy about this. Indeed. So it might be one school, maybe two. Another piece of news is that I spoke with. I mentioned Headway Advisory, and on this Thursday, I'm giving a webinar with them on the end of studies dissertation in the age of AI. I will then at some point mention my approach, or our approach to AI, our approach to the end of studies dissertation. Say we might have some solutions to a number of problems. And here again, who's bound to attend? Deans, school deans. As the webinar is being in English, there will be deans from schools from all over the world. On average, there are about 15 to 20 people attending. I've been attending every single webinar organized by Headway Advisory for more than a year, so I'm known to them, and this is also how come I'm giving this one. Very promising. Likewise, I spoke with someone who is heading a network of school principals, so technical colleges principals in France. And I remember I spoke with him about 2 weeks ago, and he loved my tools, in particular the one for the internship report assessment, and said to me, here with those technical colleges, there is a huge market, and I can help. I'm happy to help you as a lead sourcer. I've got connections. We can do something together. And we will do a webinar together late April with, so him and myself, and with technical colleges principals. Fred Peter, excuse me, I missed parts of the beginning of today's stream due to connectivity issues. No worries. No worries. So I'm still speaking of my own currents and news at the moment, but tonight will be on theoretical saturation and when you should stop with data collection after I've spoken of all this. And so this webinar is still to come, being organized soon. Next is that I am sorry, I'm also very happy because I managed to do two things this week. One is that I managed to have the US version of my website working, and I know that I showed you an earlier version of the website, but I'm now showing you the the US website. It is now online, gradesedu.io, and this website is only for the US market. So everything is in US English, and I'll give you an update on the tools. In particular, when it comes to compliance, here we are complying with US frameworks, not with European frameworks for what concerns operations in the Americas. And last, one of our partners, here is our global chief revenue officer and president of the Americas, suggested that we might need to change the name of two of our tools philosophies. I had here Isocrates, and he said you can't have Isocrates that assesses the dissertation and Socrates that is the chatbot. Both names are too close. People will be confused and mixed up. So please find something else. And I found Euclid. Euclid, you probably all know Euclid, mathematician who was interested in academic reasoning and methodological rigor. So here it's not very different from Isocrates, who was interested in rhetorics, in the structure of the argument. Here Euclid is methodological rigor. And he also said for the internship report you can't have Xenophon. Xenophon is bound to cause some problems with the name, as it's too close to xenophobic, and people might make jokes about it. So please change, replace with anything else. And he suggested Xeno, but I was not too happy with Xeno. And actually, I had this idea that Xenophon at some point might be ambiguous to a number of people. So I chose Aristotle, who is interested in applied competency, where differs from Xenophon is that Xenophon was interested in the application or translation interactions of the knowledge you have learned, whilst Aristotle is more into the consistency of your behavior and actions with who you are and with your values and your ethics. So for me, it was not a problem, but I changed the two ones. And with the website, I also have short videos, so 15 seconds, showing each tool, so it proves everything is legitimate. So I will have to remake the two videos with Euclid and Aristotle, since I've changed the name of the philosophers. So this is one big thing I have done this week. And Fuad Peter, he said, aren't AI legal frameworks interchangeable? No, they're not at all. They're not interchangeable at all, as they reflect a certain approach to privacy, a certain approach to data security, and also a certain approach to what AI can do and cannot do. The European framework is much stricter, much more restrictive than the US framework. And you might have noticed that, or you might remember that Donald Trump signed a decree months ago prohibiting that states would issue any rule, any law, any bill on AI. AI is a federal competency, because he wanted to avoid the situation where states would issue stricter regulations that would result in restrictions on the development of AI. So no, they're not interchangeable at all. The US framework is very loose, is very flexible, and encourages the development of AI. The European framework is aimed at protecting people from excessive or abusive uses or developments of AI. So the US does not really care about regulations or limits, or wants to avoid limits. The EU wants to have guardrails, and the European regulation or framework is setting guardrails. This is the biggest difference between the two, that does not make them interchangeable at all. Not at all. And sorry, likewise, I'm nearly finished with my CRM, as if you remember, I mentioned last time or some weeks ago that I had been working my CRM, and here I created it from scratch, if you remember. And here, something that has been a real nightmare has been the making sure that I would be able to enrich with contact details every single school, every single university in France. And here in title there are 2,300 something. It will be all 2,000. So you'll see here at the bottom, entitled, there are 2,652 schools and technical colleges, and out of which I had managed to find contacts for 600, and now I have got contacts for more than 1,500. How have I done that? I have found accidentally a very powerful tool, the most powerful tool in the world. But before I mention it, Fuad Peter, would it be practical to also build a parallel EU compliant website and services? Absolutely. And I've done it. It's just not online yet, as I want to have the business formally registered in France, so I can upload the website. But the website is ready. The website is ready, and compliance with EU regulations is there. The website I showed weeks ago was the European website, which is 100% compliant with GDPR, with the AI Act, and with NIS2 on cybersecurity. So it is a bit of a schizophrenic behavior, being negotiating or navigating between US regulations and EU regulations that are at times contradicting each other. But it is exciting. And I was saying, I managed to enrich my CRM with nearly 1,500 entries out of 2,652, discovering this week, not this week, even on Friday, discovering the most powerful tool ever. And I'm just telling you a bit more about this powerful tool so that you can be able to use it yourself for other purposes. What I found was Google search grounding. I'm reading before you what it is, and I found then something even stronger, which is Vertex AI. And Vertex AI, I suppose you have never heard of it. Neither had I before Friday. Okay, what is Google search grounding? Often referred to as grounding with Google search, it is a technology that connects large language models, so AI models, to the live Google search engine to improve the accuracy, timeliness, and reliability of their responses. What is interesting is that AI is trained with some data and then browses its own database to provide answers. Here, Google has developed a tool enabling to browse the entire web, the entire internet, so that responses from AI are more reliable. So how it works, instead of relying solely on the data the model was originally trained on, exactly what I said, and grounded AI follows a specific process, query generation. The system analyzes your prompt and generates optimized search queries that go on the internet. Real-time retrieval. It performs a Google search to find the latest information from across the web and not just from the database. Real-time information integration. The model reads the research results, snippets or full pages, and incorporates that data into its final answer. So it is enriched. Citations. The response typically includes links or footnotes to the specific sources used, allowing you to verify their information. So no or limited risk of hallucinations. Key benefits. Reduced hallucinations. Well, that's just what I said. By anchoring their AI in factual web data, the model is much less likely to invent facts or provide outdated information. Access to current events. Standard models have a knowledge cutoff, the date their training ended. Search grounding allows them to discuss news, stock prices, or weather that happened minutes ago. Verification. Users can click through to the original sources, which builds trust and transparency in their AI's output. Comparison. Standard AI versus grounded AI. Knowledge source. Standard AI, static training data, grounded with Google search, training data plus live web. Accuracy. Standard AI models, prone to hallucinations, grounded with Google search, higher accuracy through verification. Citations. Standard AI models, generally none or especially or unless you use Perplexity, which is known for that. Grounded with Google Search, direct links to sources. Timeliness, standard AI models, limited by cutoff date, grounded with Google Search, real-time information. And you can do a test, something very interesting, very funny. If you ask Claude about what comes next, Vertex, Claude will tell you something which is true but outdated, because what I will show you soon is was released in January, late January, whilst Claude's latest update is from I think October or September. So this means there is a 6 months lag or something. Then use in Gemini 3 Flash. In the Gemini 3 Flash environment, you are currently using search grounding is a core feature. It allows the model to handle time-sensitive queries, like your questions about Mac OS to who, okay. Would you like blah, blah, blah. And then I discovered something even stronger than this, which is Vertex AI, which is again Google. And here, Vertex AI is something that Google developed in 2021 for developers, for DevOps. So it's mainly known by geeks and not really by the general public. And it was something that allowed them to retrieve code, to retrieve some data that would help them build their software. And this has worked pretty well until 2024. Then in 2024, some improvements have been made. As late 2023, ChatGPT was first launched. So then it was connected with AI, so with ChatGPT. And January 2026, here is what it allows to do. It is Vertex AI is Google's cloud's unified machine learning platform designed to help developers and data scientists build, deploy, and scale AI models faster. It integrates all of Google's cloud services for machine learning into a single environment and API. Here is a breakdown of what makes Vertex AI a central tool for modern AI development. The core components. Vertex AI acts as a bridge between data science and IT operations through machine learning operations. Gemini on Vertex AI. It provides access to Google's most advanced multimodal models, allowing you to test and customize them for your specific business needs. This means there's something that could happen for our tools in the future, where we would have our own models, actually. Model Garden. This is a curated library of first-party, open source and third-party models that you can deploy with a few clicks instead of weeks of development. Generative AI Studio, a specialized console for quickly prototyping and testing generative AI prompts, tuning models and creating conversational agents. More or less where we're at, but something interesting. How it supports the AI lifecycle. Vertex AI manages every stage of model development, data preparation. Tools like Vertex AI datasets help you manage and label data before training. Here, what I've been doing for my CRM is that I had I had schools' registration numbers in France, and Vertex processed every single registration number and tried to retrieve websites, so their official websites, plus the name of the provost or the dean, and retrieve their contact details. So it's a bit, at times it's a bit harsh, a bit difficult, but it's working wonderfully when you're a bit patient. Key benefits for users. Unified interface. Instead of jumping between different Google Cloud tools, you manage everything from a single dashboard. That's true. Search grounding. just like the Google search grounding we discussed, Vertex AI allows you to ground your private business models in your own data or Google search to ensure factual accuracy. Exactly what I said. Low-code options, this is what I'm using. It makes AI accessible to those who aren't experts in deep learning through its automated features. And those automated features are something I've done here with Codex, where I have automated the scraping of websites, etc. Then comparison. Why use Vertex AI? So traditional machine learning setup versus Vertex AI. Setup time. Traditional machine learning, days, weeks to configure servers. This is exactly what I said. Vertex AI, minutes using pre-built environments. That's true, but the interface when you view it for the first time is a wee bit tricky. So you need some support, and this is where I had here Anti-Gravity, which is another Google product, doing the work for me. And I hope that I can show you something it did, which just bluffed me. So here is the database retrieved from by Vertex, and allowing me to build on my CRM. Full enrich. No, sorry, I'm just trying to retrieve here. Open folder. Oh no, that's here. Here it is. Here it is. Open agent, and you'll see auditing GitHub repository. No, sorry, I'm just trying to retrieve with the conversation I had, which was just incredible when it took control of my computer and was browsing their internet for me, was clicking for me everywhere I needed to. But how come? Charles Asteroid, written GitHub repository. Sorry, I can't. Okay, it doesn't matter. I hope I'll find it another day. So just back here, and then we speak of today's topic. Complexity. Traditional machine learning setup, manual management of many APIs. Vertex, single unified API and console. It's everywhere, so everything in one place. Model access with traditional machine learning built from scratch. With Vertex AI, you access to Gemini and Model Garden, so you do not have to build everything by yourself. Maintenance, traditional machine learning, high manual oversight, and here with Vertex, everything is automated. You do not have to worry about anything. So this is where I'm at. So I discovered this on Friday. I have been playing with this since then, and I have been enriching my CRM using this wonderful tool. So back to tonight's theme on theoretical saturation. Is Vertex AI like an AI desktop agent? Not exactly. It's not really an AI desktop agent. It is more. It's more really a console where you command. So you write some commands. Let me try to see if I can find. So if I can retrieve it, and I'll show you. Let's see if I. Okay, so here, if you go to Google, I've got it here. Developers. Okay, can I have it in English? Okay, sorry, it's in French, but here. I'm in Google Cloud, and with Google Cloud then you can have access to here vertex, and when you're with vertex, so you can either write a prompt and or write commands, and with this then it will do the search like I said early on. But what I've been doing is that I've not used it like this. I have called it from here, from Codex. So Codex has done all the work, has created an app, sort of an app that uses it and makes it do the work for me. That's the thing. Then is there any desktop app? I do not know. We can ask. Does Vertex desktop app exist? And we'll see. Oops, sorry. We'll see what it says. I did not think it would be a tough question. Probing desktop app context. If it does not exist per se, this is something that could be created. So for Peter, it was a tough question. Much tougher than I thought. Because the name Vertex is used by several instances, Vertex AI, okay. Here, let's see. No official desktop app. Vertex AI is a cloud-based machine learning platform. It is accessed via your web browser, command line tools, this is what I'm using, or through APIs and SDKs using Python, Java, or Node. This is also what I'm using their API. Note, some third-party wrapper tools like Web Catalog allow you to turn the Vertex AI Studio web interface into an unofficial standalone desktop window, but Google does not produce a native desktop client. Is it like a desktop agent? It is probably even more. It is probably even more than just an agent. Actually, Vertex is, let's say, the underground or the foundations of agents. So Vertex is where you will collect all the data you need to feed an agent. But it's not their agent itself. Their agent is more here with anti-gravity or with Codex when they do the work for you, when they browse their internet for you, when they browse your computer for yourself. And I'm not happy with this, well, whatever. Open folder, perhaps, no. Gosh, whatever. So, if you're okay with this, I suggest getting back to tonight's theme. So Vertex allows proper execution with accurate data of Codex-built workflows. It could be Codex, Cloud Code, or anti-gravity, but yes, it allows. It's more than just allows. It's that it does not exactly allow. It allows you to make sure that you will use the most accurate, the most comprehensive, the most recent data. That's probably it. It is more this than just being an execution thing. It is much deeper. It's the deep web. You go into the foundations of the web, of their internet, where it can collect all this data you would not have by just browsing your search engine by yourself. And or if you did, you would probably have to do hundreds of commands until you can reach something, whilst here it goes straight to the point, straight to the internet's database nearly irrespective, I would say nearly irrespective of any search engine and keywords or whatsoever. This is what makes it so strong, actually. So that's for the AI week, and I'm impressed to see how successful, how interesting this Vertex thing was. I did not expect it to be this popular for tonight. So now I would like to talk more about theoretical saturation, which means, in other words, when should we when shall I stop collecting data? And I think, and something quite interesting is that today I had a student who asked me those questions more or less. So there is something important that you must have in mind. Saturation is not a magic number. There is no magic number of how many interviews you must conduct or of how many respondents to a survey you need. No. Saturation is a process. What does it mean? Saturation is not the number. Where is the origin of the myth of that 12 interviews? Because you may have heard that you need to have at least 12 interviews to start producing knowledge. So where is this number coming from? And this is something we will discuss for the half an hour to come. What you must have in mind with saturation, so we understand. With saturation, one more interview, so you reach saturation when one more interview does not add anything to what you already know. This means that one more interview is redundant with things you have already collected in previous interviews. So you can stop. Saturation means that you can stop collecting data as you're not learning anything new. So, something I've noticed indeed is that many students, so I've noticed a few things, of course. One is that many students ask how many interviews they must conduct. And then you're always embarrassed. You never really know what number to give, especially when they do expect a number. So often they say, well, how many interviews? And they expect a number. So my answer is, well, to be honest with you, a dozen is a minimum. And how can I justify that a dozen of interviews is a minimum? So a dozen, but it's not, is it 12? Not necessarily. So how many? A dozen. About. What? This means that with a low number of interviews, you might not gain sufficient insights. With a low number of interviews, you might either have people going into so many directions that at some point you do not know what is important, what is not, what you've learned, and what cannot be learned from this study. But that's one thing. But also, when you have a low number of interviews, a risk is also that people might agree with other informants, but you never know if you have X people agreeing or if you have X people representatively agreeing. For what are those few people representative? And how far can you then draw conclusions and learn lessons from what those very few people told you? This is where This is where we are unclear. And this means that with traditionally, let's say, with less than a dozen of interviews, each extra interview is bringing new insights. Those new insights can be either something clearer, something thorougher, something enriching what other people said, or new insights into a different facet of the same problem you have not seen by yourself or others did not reveal, other interviews I mean, or you might have people disagreeing or bringing a different perspective. And at some point you reach saturation once you start seeing where people tend to agree, where people tend to disagree, and when you start seeing that you have a broad, fair understanding of the big picture and of nearly everything that you need to know about the theme, about the topic. And when you have not reached this, then you might need extra interviews. And here, I remember something my students told me this afternoon, sorry. She told me, but what if I have, let's say, 5 interviews and people all say the same things? Would this not mean that I have covered everything that must be covered? They all agree and go in the same direction and cover the same themes? And I said, probably not. Here, you do not know if you have interviewed 5 clients. Yes, perhaps the 5 clients will tell you the same things. But for what are they representative? That's part of the question. And this makes me think of one thing as I'm talking. Let me just... I'm just showing you a little something quickly and you will understand the problem. If you have interviewed, look here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 matrix agents. All of them will tell you the same story. Okay, but what is this story worth? This story is worth what matrix agents would say, not necessarily what you need to know either, let's say, about the matrix or about the world or whatsoever. And this is where we have a problem. But if you then interview many more people out with matrix agents, then you start having something interesting. You start having proper insights. Here, let's say matrix agents are like the matrix police, and you want to know about security or whatsoever. So then you might also need to interview people from other police. And why not the Men in Black? The Matrix versus Men in Black. Then you might see what Men in Black, Will Smith and brothers would tell you. But likewise, you might need to interview other police. And then you might have different insights and different versions, different views of what the police is and what the police does. And at the end of the day, you might arrive at a conclusion that, I have different views of the police, of its role, missions, etc. Or you might arrive at the conclusion that the police, wherever it is, whatever it is, has the same role, same mission, and does the same thing. Be it the Matrix, be it Men in Black. I hope the comparison or the analogy makes sense. And I quite like this example, the Matrix and Men in Black, especially after we spoke of AI and vertex. I'm just checking something real time. Do I find? Let's see this one. I've just come across this, which might be...
The Matrix has an interesting use of the Men in Black archetype. The Men in Black emerged into American pop culture over the latter half of the 20th century as representing some unknown authority, whether earthly or otherwise, often clandestine in the way they operate and quickly forgotten or disregarded by those they encounter. Most people identify the Men in Black as being affiliated with UFO sightings. That was always the shtick. Someone reports a UFO and the Men in Black show up to silence them, usually by intimidation and fear. This is the urban legend the Will Smith franchise is based on. But Men in Black encounters actually go back way beyond the history of the United States, with mysterious men in black attire showing up at major moments of flux and change, events of historical significance. And although they were purportedly attired in black, usually commensurate with the era, give or take 50 to 100 years, there was always something off about the encounters. The agents in the Matrix are derived from this archetype. The Men in Black always seem to know when something will occur.
Okay, I'll not continue to the end. I just wanted to show that you will reach different insights when you confront different viewpoints. Here, having only clones will not enable you to learn anything, however many people you interview. So important here is to be clear with whom you're interviewing and what you can expect from your informants. So from this, what I said, there are two errors. The first one is the one I've mentioned, so what number of interviews, etc. The other error is when you have qualitative dissertation that give their impression of being rich because you have many quotes, because you have many interviews, but at the end of the day, they're not analyzing anything. They are just producing more and more quotes. And the question is, how can we identify and how can we prevent you're welcome, Brian, and how can you prevent such a void from happening, analytical void from happening? So excuse me. Here I would like to show you a dissertation, a real dissertation I assessed years ago, and then also my own review of it. Not everything, of course, but sorry, just trying to retrieve the original text. Where is it? No, just have yeah, here we are. Okay, I'm showing you this, sharing my screen with you so you understand the point. I'm here with just a doctoral thesis. I was the internal examiner. So here we've got a student, and it was not you, Fuad Peter, even if the author speaks of charmers, it was not you. So here we've got a student saying, I will do grounded theory. And look, we're here, data collection and timing, blah, blah, blah. We've got sort of a textbook explanation of what interviews are for, what the merits of doing interviews are, blah, blah, blah. Okay, not very useful. Then she explains how you can find data, research time horizon, blah, blah, blah. We still do not know what she's doing. So what is interesting is here. Okay, let's see what she says. The researcher will use semi-structured interviews for the first group of interviews that represent issues identified by the researcher as relevant to the focus on the practices and routines of the case study organizations, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so the wording is a bit heavy, a bit clumsy, but let's say it's okay. So, Steig suggested that the researcher develops an understanding of the cases. Initial researcher identified issues evolved and are transformed by the views of study participants. Okay, so the researcher will schedule interviews to last 45 minutes. I think when you decide about the end, there is a problem. But let's say, for Peter, if we encounter a corporate culture encouraging conformance, does it mean that relying on one firm is insufficient, regardless of the number of interviews? Probably yes. Probably yes. Especially if you interview people on something that relates to their organization as such, where there's sort of a dominant discourse. For instance, I remember years ago when Andersen still existed, when you interviewed people from Andersen, they were all telling you the same story, all telling you the same corporate story. They were very much into corporate culture and conformism. I fully agree with you. So what would have been interesting would have been to see how this conformism is constructed at Andersen. But I fully agree here, if you are exposed to that problem of conformist organizations, then indeed it is probably better to find people who are not necessarily members of that organization. Then the concern is not the organization itself, but it's more the people. If you want to interview auditors, then you might need to interview auditors who are not just working in the same firm, even if this firm is one of the biggest in the world, because you might have just their view, so their company's view, and you might have their impression, the false impression that this view is the one of the entire market or of the entire auditor's world, which it is not. So I'll continue here. She was saying 45 minutes. Chalmers warns against imposing arbitrary limits for interviews. Absolutely. Especially as here, what she wanted to do, we're still speaking of saturation here, of course. When you conduct an interview with someone, when should you stop? Well, you stop either when the person no longer has time for you and has another commitment, or when you are let's say, full of information, when you know everything you needed to know, when the person no longer has anything additional to tell you, and then when you realize that the discussion is turning in circles, and then at some point you can stop. And here is a comment from you, Fuad Peter. Could AI help to identify such patterns of conformance in preliminary interviews? Yeah, possibly. I need to think about this, not about this, but how we could do that. But yes, of course, with a good prompt, if you provide a number of interviews, you can, with a good prompt, identify the degree or extent of conformism and identify whether this is organization driven or profession driven. If it is profession driven, then you will hear the same story everywhere. And this is often true when you are in investment banking, where nearly everybody says the same things. But when you are in audit, you will see that not everybody from all firms will tell you the same story. But yes, AI could help. So here I'm just thinking of someone with whom I'm working. She is conducting interviews with female entrepreneurs, and as a matter of principle, it is open-ended interviews. So she does not schedule for 1 hour for whatsoever. She stays until the person no longer has anything to say, and this can last for an entire afternoon. And then saturation occurs when at some point the conversation is no longer on the theme because we have drained it, we have exhausted the theme and then shifted to something else. And this is where for one single interview you might identify that indeed I have reached saturation here with this particular interview. And the same thing happens with however many interviews you've conducted. And here let's continue. I want to see how she presents the data and how she speaks of saturation. Credibility, research design, justification. She never speaks of saturation. It's not the student with whom I'm currently working, but the different one. So the one I assessed. So here she says the following steps proposed by Chalmers. Theoretical sampling involves a systematic process called saturation. Okay, and how is she handling? Challenges associated with grand theory approaches include not allowing preconceived theories to interfere or to determine when data saturation is reached. Okay, so comparison method of coding as well as theoretical sampling, theoretical saturation, we still do not know. Theoretical saturation has a goal similar to theoretical sampling in that its primary objective is to develop theory rather than be statistically representative of a target population. Okay, but we still do not know how this is operationalized here in this particular thesis. Saturation. Let's continue. Theoretical sampling involves blah blah blah. Here we have nothing telling us how saturation has been reached or how it has been controlled for. Employing theoretical saturation, blah blah blah. We do not know anything. So this probably means the student here did not really know what she was speaking about. And one of my critiques on the thesis was that too much of it was reading like a textbook and was not specific enough, so that I had no clue what she had actually done in her thesis. So here, interview questions. Here, problem. She does grounded theory. Supposedly, she wants to reach saturation, and she has an interview grid with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 questions. With so many questions, you are not allowing for saturation, as you have quasi-closed questions. You do not let people talk, you do not let people give you insights, enabling you to maximize your theoretical understanding. Here, you sort of tick boxes. What are the strengths and weaknesses of the choices that were made by merits, blah, blah, blah. So here, a general question, something you could read anywhere. I mean, the answer. How do you define lifestyle, lodging, blah, blah, blah? In general, is it a field, blah, blah, blah. Not very insightful, I'm afraid. So to reach that time where extra insights do not add anything, you're far from it. Let's see then what happens here. Representative quotes. Okay, so here she says she has identified a number of quotes, and the quotes here, you see a number on Brown's been segmenting, growing, lacking standards, so you do not really know where they're coming from, but say you've got a long procession of quotes. But at the end of the day, I have no idea at all what those quotes are exactly meaning, how they've been selected, and whether she had a sufficient number of interviews to allow her to arrive at something really telling us a story. Here, for instance, reasoning behind acquisition. When Starwood was acquired, a hotel chain was acquired by Marriott. So the acquisition of Starwood by Marriott is not the assets. What you're doing is buying the brands. Oh, what a scoop! What a hot topic! I would never have known that you're buying a brand and not buying assets. So here it is clearly a very generic claim anybody could have made. And I doubt that a number of interviews would have been sufficient to really arrive at something more. So here, something more would have been what in particular is interesting in this brand, in Starwood. And at some point you might have someone saying, oh, we wanted, I do not know, when we acquired Starwood, of course we didn't want the hotels per se, we wanted the brand because it was targeting this particular audience which was not natural to Marriott, and we could reach them this way, that way, etc. Something like this would have brought insights. And here maybe an extra interview could have brought such insights. But here we remain at a very general, very generic level. So far from saturation. I would not have needed a DBI thesis for this. I'm not going through the whole thesis, just showing you a few things. So here we've got a long series of quotes, with again here becoming more flexible. So the brands have to look at their own culture and say how we can make our own culture more flexible. This is a critical requirement for these brands to be successful. You could say exactly the same for any multi-brand company. So honestly, I'm not learning anything here. So I'm not going through the whole thing, but then I'd like to show you my just what I wrote in my review. So here I will not read everything in the review, but things on the methodology and the range of just everything. So a few things from methodology and from preliminary findings. So here, as you see, chapter 3 on methodology is highly problematic since it operates at a very general and generic level, almost reading like a handbook or a digest. This is what I showed you. So I'm not getting back to this. I recommend that a candidate should do what I was systematically asking my own students. Okay, but now here I'm reading from here. In this methodology chapter, the candidate needs to clarify the questions asked and why these are asked and worded in a certain way. That is, the reader needs to be 100% clear with the research protocol. Usually, interview questions must be grounded in the literature. This is the big challenge for grounded theorists, since Glaser and Strauss reject any preliminary literature. Still, the reader needs to know how the candidate arrived at these questions. For me, it is a wee baroque to see interview questions in the pilot study chapter. In this respect, questions are far too many in number, so 14 if you remember, and do not really allow me to understand how the research questions are being answered through their asking. Given their interviews, most of the time last about an hour. 4 to 6 questions are more than enough to cover the main themes and arrive at generating a grounded theory. We're far from it. Reading the preliminary findings section, I'm left unconvinced by how the concepts have emerged. I see that quite a few have, but I'm less than clear as to how people's utterings have led to them. I do not see any clear protocol and coding process enabling me to adhere to these conclusions. Like I said earlier, the challenge for the candidate is to manage to provide the reader with a clear-cut protocol for data coding. Otherwise, a big leap of faith is expected of the reader. Why should we have faith in the candidate? This pilot study needs some major editing but has some good potential. The conclusions drawn from this pilot study are still very empirical, do not really address a theoretical concern. So here, this probably means that the student has only extracted some expressions, some sentences she thought might be interesting. Oh, it's interesting, but is it useful? Is it helping me answer my research question? Not very clear, not very obvious here. I think, therefore, the candidate would benefit from endeavoring at articulating a tentative theory she will apply to the main study. Should she want to stick to grounded theory for the main study, then she could adopt Strauss and Corbin's approach, theta, i.e. an approach compatible with a loose theoretical framework. If the candidate only used grounded theory for the purpose of this pilot study, then it is the framework derived thence that needs strong applying. In either case, the reader remains less than certain as to what methodologically is being done in the main study, how and why. And here, my main recommendation here is to relinquish all those general and generic statements and engage in issues specific and peculiar to the thesis and to the topic. The reader needs to know who the researcher is and who their informants are, and how he or she has come to this particular topic and conclusions. And then their entire research protocol needs to be made clear, transparent, and foremost specific. So here, what I wanted to show you with this with this thesis is that we have a problem where the thesis relies on a number of interviews, but those interviews were too rigidly framed with 45 minutes sharp with 14 questions, which means 45 divided by 14, it means about 2 minutes and 30 seconds for each question. With this amount of time per interview, you are far from gaining proper insights. You can only expect to have general and generic claims. And this, however many interviews you conduct, an extra interview will bring you some more general and generic insights. Here, how can we, from there, reach saturation outside? First, to reach saturation, you must have a limited number of questions so people can talk. You must let people talk as much as they can. Second, you must make sure people talk about themselves, not in general, in abstract terms, but about themselves, about their own experience. Third, you must be capable of deciding when their interview should end because you are turning in circles or because you have so much spoken of the topic that you are no longer addressing it and discussing something different. Then you're saturated with this interview. And lastly, how can we make sure that we have reached saturation in title when the extra interview you have conducted has not brought any extra insights but has sort of been redundant with the other ones. And in this case, you can decide to stop. Here, 3 things I want you to have in mind, and where I want to stop to, on which I want to conclude, would be 3. First, quoting is not analyzing. You saw in this dissertation a number of quotes, but no real analysis. A quote is not always valid, it's not always insightful. A generic statement is worth 0. Many qualitative dissertations accumulate quotes to hide the absence of any proper thought, of any capability of generating a theory. Empirical material does not become an analysis through a simple copy and paste. Your empirical material becomes analysis when you make sense of it, when you are capable of learning lessons from it. So here, for tonight, I really wanted to highlight where this myth of 12 interviews finds its origins, and why we as supervisors say no less than 12 interviews on one hand. On the other hand, what more broadly and beyond this, it means having a sufficient number of interviews and how you can assess for it. And here I showed you an example of a thesis where we were far from it. So you could see in filigree, I would say, or as in a negative, what can or what should be done, or what at least you should ensure, what you should check multiple times. So I hope it was clear and helpful. I know I spoke much longer on AI and vertex than on theoretical saturation, but it was okay as I could hold for about half an hour with saturation. So I want really to insist on 2 things I have already said a few times. One is saturation is not a magic number. There is no magic number as to how many interviews you need to have a good thesis. One more interview does not make your research better. One more interview does not necessarily bring new insights. You know when to stop. That's what I really want you to retain from tonight. I do not know if you have any other remarks, comments, or whatsoever. If yes, I'm more than happy to answer, to interact. If not, then I should let you go. And next week I will address something like whether you can use your own organization as empirical field, and what risk or to what you should pay attention when you do so. So thank you very much. I wish you a lovely week ahead, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next Sunday with again some more news from the AI front on one hand, and with some more insights into methodology. So have a lovely evening, a great week, and see you next time. Bye to all.